Welcome to LimeLoop's Behind the Green podcast, where we get the inside scoop on all things sustainability and talk to people prioritizing and building a greener tomorrow. I'm your host, Rebecca Smith, and today I'm joined by George Wojciechowski, the co-founder and CEO of Manifest. George has been working in the shipping and fulfillment space for almost 10 years. Previously, he co-founded the 3PL ShipBob and in June of 2021 co-founded Manifest, which is dedicated to providing sustainable e-commerce fulfillment solutions. George noticed that oversized 3PL models produce too much waste and resort to cutbacks on the client experience, and thus Manifest began. Manifest helps teach brands how to be more efficient and more environmentally friendly while putting the customer experience first. Today, we'll dive into how retailers can prioritize the customer experience while keeping sustainability goals top of mind, which is especially relevant as we head into this holiday season. So let's dive right in. All right, George, thanks for being here. I'd love for you to give a little intro of yourself, if you will.
Yeah, I'm George Wojciechowski, CEO of Manifest Commerce. We are a sustainable third-party logistics company based just outside of Austin, Texas, in a town called Buda. I've been in the logistics industry for the better half of a decade. And recently, I formed Manifest Commerce with two of my partners to create a paradigm shift in e-commerce and switch our industry to on a more sustainable path than we have been.
Awesome. Love that. That's perfect. Let's dive right into these questions then. So Manifest, as you said, right, is all about helping retailers minimize waste and work with those 3PLs and being more sustainable in their fulfillment process. And so can you tell me more about what the fulfillment process really looks like in general and like what that is from start to finish, just for those of us that don't really know what that looks like?
Yeah, so the fulfillment process is fairly straightforward. It's reason built on top of reason, built on top of reason, and then you have to prepare yourself for the endless variables, as you know, that come along in the business of shipping. However, it's been very surprising that so much has changed in e-commerce over the last 15, 20, 25 years, and we're still very much doing fulfillment the same way that it was done 25 years ago. That to me was shocking. So when I set about reimagining what 21st fulfillment should look like, there was no doubt in my mind that sustainability as the North Star is a must. I believe that the current state of e-commerce is unsustainable and that we need better solutions. One of the things that has occurred over the last couple of years is that we've seen a dramatic shift from how comfortable the broader part of the population is with e-commerce. When COVID hit, people like my 71-year-old mother went from never shopping online to now, 3 years later, she gets everything from her groceries to her, anything that she would buy at a department store 4 years ago, she is now getting online. And so this is, I think it was one of the executives at Shopify recently said that there's no difference between e-commerce and traditional commerce anymore. It's all just commerce because e-commerce is here to stay, and it's just the way that we naturally shop nowadays. And given that that's where the world is heading, we need a more sustainable solution in the 3PL industry, in the e-commerce industry or the commerce industry, that takes into account not just the sustainability of the materials we use as a vessel to deliver these products, but a broader view of the supply chain and how we can be more efficient, earth-friendly, responsible, socially and environmentally responsible, and take into all these critical factors to our daily lives and in the industry that many of us operate in to support our daily lives. And I think those go hand in hand. And I think part of the problem, part of the issue is that everybody wants to do good. Most people want to do good, but showing people how it can be done and how it's done and the education process is, I think, the state where things are today.
Yeah, it's super important. There's so many, especially when you think about sustainability, I almost think it's become a little bit of a buzzword, right? Where we say sustainability all the time, but what does that really mean? And digressing a little bit, I realize I think both of us are wearing green right now. We're pushing that sustainability piece without even planning on it. Which I just noticed. But
it's surprisingly cold in Austin, Texas. I usually don't wear sweaters, but it's necessary today.
Yep, need it. I want to go back a little bit to something that you had just said. So in your experience, what do you think is the most wasteful part of the process? Because you'd mentioned that there's a whole lot of waste that sustainability needs to be fixed. What's the most wasteful part of this process in the fulfillment space?
Yeah, I think there's a few. But for me, I'm still kind of awestruck when I start thinking about the process of e-commerce and the millions and tens of millions of packages that are delivered daily. And almost every single one of those packages, with the exception of those merchants and customers utilizing LimeLoop, that vessel, that box, that poly mailer is a one-trick pony. It is to get a product from point A to point B. And I think that's kind of sad because so much gets wasted. And in tradition, and if you kind of step back from, we'll go into how Manifest does our fulfillment sustainably. But if you go back into like just traditional fulfillment, and including ours as well, just the corrugate that goes, the corrugate that's derived from lumber, the poly mailers that are, that utilize a lot of plastic, all the void fill, all the different components to get packages safely to customers' doorsteps. I think very few people still realize today how taxing that is, how much resources goes into getting this relatively simple act accomplished. And I think moving away from that in a few ways, in choosing materials that are reusable or sustainable, preferably biodegradable, because recycle is good, but the deeper you go down the rabbit hole of recycling, the more you find out that items to be recycled need to be perfectly in condition for the recycling company to choose that item to actually go out and recycle it. And you also can't always rely on people to do the right thing and to recycle or to go to the recycling bin versus just throwing it down the trash chute. So I think that the materials that are used, that are sourced to accomplish the tasks of delivering packages is where attention needs to be given. For Rebecca, the most wasteful part of the process is clearly the packaging, the methods in which the packages are being delivered. Like as good as we do, or as good as we try to do to reimagine fulfillment within the fulfillment center walls at Manifest, 9 times out of 10, it still gets on a diesel truck after it gets picked up from our facility. So we're starting where we have deep expertise, but I think the need in the future as we go on and start to convert more merchants to choosing to ship sustainably is to look at the broader supply chain and the broader e-commerce ecosystem and find partners and like-minded companies that are moving in the same direction, that have the same North Star around sustainability and environmental responsibility, and find ways to work together to create a value proposition that's just as strong as the lazy value proposition that everyone has become accustomed to, but in a new way, and in a way that makes a lot more sense, not just business-wise, but for the environment, for society, and for our legacies. I think one of the great things about e-commerce is that it's provided so many people the opportunity to leave their jobs and start businesses or create side hustles. This is really good. It's tremendous democratization of opportunity for people to take an inspired idea and turn it in, use tools like Shopify and the broader e-commerce ecosystem and create a business. But I also think that, once the education as to what the cost is, the actual cost is behind the scenes of running these businesses and operating these businesses, people want to be on the right side of history and they want to be proud of their legacy not just the businesses that they create and how successful they were, but what kind of legacy that they left behind for future generations and what their business took from the planet to achieve its success. And so discovering ways to do that in the way that's responsible, ethical, is I think the goal here.
Yeah, no, that's such a great point. It's especially since now, when you said before about how e-commerce, it's not just e-commerce, right? Everything is all together now in one. Like it's just makes commerce more available to everyone, right? That means that everyone, whether you live in a tiny town outside of Austin or you live in the big city of New York, you have access no matter where you are to everything. But then it's thinking about that sustainability piece of, okay, what kind of legacy am I going to leave behind if I am constantly buying all these, stuff that's just going to take up space and then I'm throwing it into a landfill, right? It's like thinking about how every little decision that you make is going to add up to something big. And I think that's a really interesting way to think about that a lot of people don't necessarily think about.
Yeah, I think more and more people are starting to look at themselves and the way that they live their lives and ask, how big is my environmental footprint?
Yeah.
How much bigger is it than it has to be? And how much am I taking as an individual compared to other people around the planet? And am I doing my part to be conscious of that?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is actually a really good kind of tie into where we are right now. Considering the holidays are coming up really quick. We're gonna be right at the end of December soon. And I think I read recently that I think it was 23%. Household waste increases by 23% around the holidays because of all the shopping that we're doing. And that comes with gifts and decorations and even food, right? There's so much waste that happens. And how does that really impact a retailer during this time? From this fulfillment perspective as well? What kind of stuff do they have to think about and deal with a little bit more around the holidays?
Yeah, I think you need to build in your processes ahead of time or for sustainability, because one thing that every retailer experienced during the holidays is most retailers will experience is a massive pickup in their
Mm-hmm.
business. And when the velocity is turned up 3, 4, 5, 6x on the amount of orders that are coming in and that you're required to ship out, things like how do we do the right thing and recycle these materials that don't need to be utilized in this shipment or came off a inventory that arrived. So having discipline around the processes ahead of time will certainly help with dealing with the massive uptick in volume and continuing to do the right sustainable practices, because it's very easy to deprioritize that when you have so many urgent issues in front of you during the holiday season as a retailer. So I think that affects retailers a lot. Hopefully, as many as possible are looking at the landscape that's ahead of us over the next month and are thinking about that and be like, well, things are going to slip. Things always slip, but how do we really stay disciplined to our core, to the mission that we're representing to our audience, that we're representing to our customers, and what we stand for as a company? And that takes a little bit of planning ahead of time, and prioritizing it in the real time, even with competing priorities so front and center.
Yeah, this is actually a really good place, I think, too, to give a little like description of how Manifest works in this, because I think Manifest, right, is a really good way that just the way that you've set up your business, like it's a good way that retailers can start to prevent this and get ahead of the game.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, like I mentioned before, our sustainability is North Star. The reason we built this 3PL was not because necessarily building a 3PL it's exciting to us and it means a lot. And we've been in this business for like I said, the better half of a decade. But the idea of being part of the movement, being part of the groundswell with companies like LimeLoop and EcoCart and shifting e-commerce into a more sustainable direction, I think is very exciting. And given that it's exciting, it's our number one priority. So a lot of these issues that I know are going to affect retailers this holiday season is something that we were thinking about back in September. We know we're going to see among our clients an uptick of 3, 4, 5, 6x, depending on the client, their volume over the next month. If we are the company who we set about building and we stand for what we say that we stand for, we need to adhere to our principles and our discipline. And we've been working really hard over the last 4, 5, 6 weeks, creating those processes in place that, in the fulfillment center, when we are, when we come into the office on a Monday morning and the volume is like, we have our SLAs and the volume is an impossible amount of orders that came in over the last 24 or 48 hours, we're still going to practice what we preach and do the sustainable thing. And our value proposition, kind of dialing back for a second, is we're a zero plastics facility. Our fulfillment is done involving zero plastics. That includes no plastic tape, no plastic void fill, air pillows, any of those materials that we know are going to have a hard time biodegrading and are going to be hanging around for decades on this planet, we've essentially eliminated. A lot of people don't know that something as simple as the plastic tape that often arrives on packages takes up to 500 years to completely decompose. That's when I read that statistic early on in my research, I was shocked by that. That's longer than the United States has been a country, than our society, that we've been able to identify as a nation. So thinking about just something as simple as something inconsequential that you'll buy on a whim at 9:30 on a Wednesday night that arrives at your doorstep on a Friday, and let's call it a tea tree oil that comes in like a plastic wrap, that's going to be there for the next 5 centuries, more or less.
It's
And so
wild.
it's so wild. It's so wild. And we're just scratching the surface. I don't know if we have time to go into all the different things that go into common fulfillment being done today that, you just kind of shake your head in light of, better alternatives being available. Why do we continue to utilize these practices and utilize these materials? But we're a zero plastics facility. We've eliminated that from the fulfillment process. All of our shipments are carbon neutral. We work with our partner EcoCart to offset the carbon footprint on every single one of our shipments. That's not the end all be all. We don't hang our hat on just offsetting the carbon footprint and saying, okay, yeah, we're sustainable. It's kind of a little bit like buying indulgences from the Catholic Church in the Middle Ages. It's a thing. You feel bad about it, but it's a necessary evil. And so we've taken it one step further. All of our packages, all of our poly mailers, boxes are biodegradable, sometimes curbside recyclable, but we prefer to use biodegradable materials. All of our void fill, biodegradable. Our poly mailers, for example, decompose in about 550 days completely, whereas the traditional poly mailer takes about 23 years. So it's just an example of the types of materials we use versus the common materials used in fulfillment. Yeah.
Cool. No, that's great. That's actually a really good tie-in too, to kind of how I want to end this, is that like if retailers, if we don't make a change in the way that we are moving goods around to consumers between stores, like where do you actually think the world is going to go? If we don't get more sustainable, what's going to happen?
Oh, I think a lot of the potential scenarios that you keep hearing talked about, and half the population is like, it's just, down. What does that concern me today? And then the other half of the population is super concerned about these. I think you'll start to see a lot of these changes happen, and but taking a step back, Rebecca, I think that the change has already happened. I actually think that a lot of retailers are slow to the changes that are naturally occurring among the consumers. I've observed that key 18 to 50 demographic now more than ever shopping with brands and voting with their dollar with brands and companies and ideas and missions and organizations that reflect their ethos around social and environmental issues now more than ever. I think that that's not the problem. If you have any young teenagers or 20 somethings in your life, that's kind of how they already grew up thinking, and I think it's the businesses who find it somewhat inconvenient to make these changes, to implement these changes, because they have, again, all their competing priorities. Everybody wants to grow. Everybody wants to add more people. Everybody wants to have better businesses, better environment for their employees. But I think when it comes to shopping, it's the new brand loyalty. If you're socially and environmentally responsible as a brand and you can represent yourself confidently as such, it's going to attract an audience of people who are more loyal to your brand than they are to a competitor who may have a similar product that doesn't stand for anything more than, hey, we produce this product and it's cool. So I think slowly but surely retailers are going to start to prioritize, hey, how can we be better as an organization? And there's a lot of social pressure that's building. Right now, it's on the bigger companies. The bigger companies get called out because they're either greenwashing or they're not doing enough. But that's going to filter down to small and medium-sized businesses. That's inevitable. And I think the early merchants were able to recognize that it's not just the right thing to do, that companies like Manifest and LimeLoop make it economical to do, but that it also is a competitive advantage in the new marketplace to position your brand, to make these sustainable choices. I think you're going to see more and more of a groundswell of brands take these steps and discover that these solutions exist and are great to implement into their business and position themselves as a brand.
Yeah. No, it's a really great breath of fresh air to hear a very optimistic perspective as well, right? You could ask this question to anyone of, okay, what's going to happen if we don't make changes? And a lot of times people kind of go down a negative path of this is what's going to happen. This was a very nice breath of fresh air to say people are changing, people are more ethical, they're prioritizing values or they're prioritizing brands that have similar values to them, and the change is happening. So I love that you just ended with that. That is such a great
Yeah,
way to end this. Is there anything else
wonderful.
that you want to leave us with? Any other thoughts? Anything you want to share?
Yeah, I'm really happy to have this conversation, Rebecca. I'm a big fan of LimeLoop. I think your reusable products are part of the solution, a big part of the solution as we look into the future of packaging and fulfillment. A lot of focus right now that we have internally at Manifest is on how can we get smaller? How can we be more efficient
Mm-hmm.
in the packaging? Use less materials, use smarter packaging. And I think LimeLoop works with that really well because you take it one step further. It's not just disposable packaging that's being packaged efficiently, but now it's something that can be used 50, 100, 150 times over and over. That's a better world. I think we can all agree. It's a better world in which shopping and commerce merge to create a unique experience for people to buy products that they need and want and to feel good about it. I think we've all had that feeling at some point in our lives where you go to the recycling bin on a Tuesday or Wednesday or whenever your trash is picked up and you can't even put the package in the recycling bin because
Yep.
the lid is up. And our goal is to help eradicate that problem and create not necessarily guilt-free shopping because everything takes resources, but feel better about this, feel more confident that the shopping and the choices that we're making aren't just selfish choices, but they are choices that are responsible and that we can have the things that we want and uh, start to minimize the impact that they make on the world at large.
Yeah, no, that's great. I love that. We love working with you at Manifest as well. So love that so much. If you could real quickly let everybody know where to find Manifest, where to find you online, just plug some social, plug your website, and
Yeah,
how to get find you.
my our website at Manifest is www.manifest.eco. My email address is george@manifest.eco. And you can also find me on LinkedIn or on Twitter, where I believe my handle is Wojski, Wojskig.
Perfect. I'll make sure those are all in the notes as well so people can find you there. And thank you so
Cool.
much for your time. We will talk again soon.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. My pleasure.
Thanks for listening in to LimeLoop's Behind the Green podcast. If you want to listen to episodes, visit anchor.fm/the LimeLoop, and we'll see you in here next time.